Humanity stood at the brink of extinction. Elena placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Jake, trust in human ingenuity," she murmured. "We have always outperformed expectations in war. This will be no different." Jake returned to the bridge where his crew was already executing the general's directives. Beyond the viewport, the alien armada had begun its advance. 350 harbingers of death were moving toward Earth, bearing down on everything humanity had erected and dared to imagine. The struggle for human survival had officially begun. Fleet Commander Thakore stood upon the command dais of his flagship, Eternal Dominion, and regarded the small blue orb that floated in the velvet dark before him. His 4 eyes shone with approval as he watched primitive electromagnetic chatter leak from the planet like scattered embers. The humans were broadcasting their panic across their bands. "Status report," he clicked, the syllables sharp in the guttural cadence of his tongue. Sub-Commander Valus approached, sensor logs pulsing on a concave display. "Indigenous species has achieved rudimentary chemical propulsion," he reported. "Commander, we detect multiple orbital platforms and rudimentary defensive satellites about their world. Their largest craft register at only a few hundred meters long." Thakore's mandibles ground in what served as amusement among his people. In 3 centuries of service to the Zephyrian Empire, he had directed the subjugation of a dozen star systems. This would be the simplest campaign of his career. The humans had scarcely freed themselves from their gravity well, attempting to shield themselves with devices that trailed Zephyrian science by millennia. "Deploy standard intimidation array," he instructed. "Make every ship visible on their crude sensors. Show them the full might of the Empire before the harvest begins." The massive formation unfurled across the void in a design meant to crush morale. Each vessel was a testament to Zephyrian metallurgy and martial genius. The smallest frigates carried ordnance capable of turning continents to cinders. The Leviathans could fracture moons with a single concentrated discharge. Weapons Officer Cathan spun from his console, voice trembling with eager delight. "Commander, our scans indicate the planet's crust is rich in strategic elements," he announced. "The humans have barely begun to exploit their deposits. This world will yield material for at least 50 new battlecruisers." Thakore nodded, pleased. The Great Harvest underpinned every chapter of Zephyrian expansion. Conquered worlds were stripped to their cores and transmuted into the Empire's tools. Planets became hulls. Moons were reforged into munitions. Whole systems were remade to serve conquest. What the Zephyrians failed to perceive were the quantum mass arrays woven through the solar system like an invisible lattice. Humanity had deliberately cultivated the outward illusion of technological backwardness. The true defenses lay in layers Zephyrian sensors could not reach. Every broadcast the humans made had been carefully curated to sell that illusion. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Paul Martinez stood within a command complex that officially was not on any map. Ranks of quantum processors surrounded him like dormant titans. Each rack contained compute density that dwarfed entire Zephyrian task forces. The walls displayed tactical readouts so dense an alien mind would find them meaningless. "Sir," Sergeant Katie Williams called from the sensor array. "The Armada has crossed Mars orbit," she reported. "They maintain standard battle spacing with no signs of defensive posture. They appear wholly oblivious to our genuine capabilities." Martinez allowed a cold, thin smile to touch his features. Humanity's greatest strategic edge had long been the art of seeming weaker than reality. Other species paraded their strengths as warnings. Humans learned to conceal power until the decisive instant. Now, beneath stone and in hidden dimensions, that lesson would be tested. The coming hours would decide whether that lesson, forged through centuries of improvisation and stubborn audacity, could buy time enough to turn the tide or doom billions to oblivion. The Zephyrian Armada continued its measured sweep toward Earth. Each hull bristled with energy lances and matter disruptors that had reduced countless worlds to ash. Thakore watched the tactical feeds with a mounting self-assurance. The human orbital defenses were laughably frail. Their platforms carried weapons that couldn't so much as nick Zephyrian plating. He ordered a transmission be sent and leaned forward to savor the moment. "I want them to understand exactly what they face," he said. The broadcast spilled onto every screen and frequency on Earth. Thakore's vast silhouette filled displays everywhere. Forearms splayed in a gesture meant to convey inevitability, the same pose that had cowed 47 species into submission. Peoples of the third planet, behold the fleet that now approaches your world. These are the vessels that crushed the Altarian Federation. These are the arms that shattered the crystal spires of Vex Prime. These are the warriors that broke the militant hives of Kepler. Behind him, hollow panels cycled images of annihilation, cities reduced to molten ruins beneath orbital barrages, refugee columns scattering under the shadow of dropships, planets being methodically dismantled as gargantuan industrial hulls chewed through crust and mantle. Your fragile ships cannot contend with us, the message continued. Your primitive ordnance cannot harm our armor. Your orbital emplacements are little more than targets for gunnery practice. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Resist and we will prolong your agony for generations before granting the mercy of oblivion. The feed cut. Thakore reclined from the console, satisfied. Fear was the Zephyrian Empire's finest tool. Most species folded without exchanging a shot once they grasped the scale of hopelessness. Beneath the Nevada desert, inside a labyrinthine complex miles long, Dr. Alex Chen stood amid a forest of humming machinery. Quantum field generators lined the cavernous walls like dormant leviathans. Dimensional anchor arrays scribed impossible geometries into the air, structures that existed simultaneously across 17 realities. All systems show green, reported Dr. Maya Patel from the central station. The quantum entanglement lattice is stable and primed. All breach anchors locked to target vectors. Chen checked his final figures with a practiced calm. The math they were about to invoke was alien even to Zephyrian theory. While other civilizations had refined raw energy and matter, humanity had learned to bend the quantum foam itself, to slip fingers into the seams between dimensions where physical law thinned to suggestion. Colonel Steve Johnson's voice came over the secure net from Pacific Fleet Command. All naval platforms are synchronized with ground arrays. Quantum torpedo banks are armed. Target locks are established on the entire approaching flotilla. Far above, the Zephyrian Armada advanced with the confidence of apex predators that had never been denied. Thakore prepared his final ultimatum, certain that the sight of his throng would extinguish any flicker of resistance. They had no idea that evolution sometimes took strange detours, and that humanity had followed one path that made them far deadlier than any empire could foresee. Chen stood at the heart of the Prometheus project, 3 meters beneath rock and sand, watching hollows of the enemy sweep across his displays. His hands danced across control interfaces that mapped and acted in multiple dimensions at once. The device around him pulsed with a power that could unmake and reweave reality itself. Quantum entanglement networks hummed, waiting for the moment to become humanity's answer to annihilation. The grids are holding at 99.7% efficiency, Dr. Maya Patel reported from her console. Banks of quantum processors loomed around her like dormant colossi. Each rack held computational density enough to model entire galaxies. All dimensional anchor points are locked to target vectors. Field generators stand by for cascade activation. Chen nodded and pulled up the tactical overlay that tracked every hull in the Zephyrian Armada. The invaders had no inkling of the trap awaiting them. Their sensors read only energy and matter. The weapons humanity had forged operated on principles outside ordinary space-time. The Zephyrians were children playing with sparks beside a reactor core. Colonel Steve Johnson's voice cut in from Pacific Fleet Command, his tone steady over the secure channel. All submarine platforms are in position and synchronized with terrestrial arrays. Quantum torpedo banks are loaded and ready. We have confirmed target locks on every hostile vessel. Chen allowed himself a tight, grim smile. The submarines drifting in Earth's oceans carried munitions that could puncture realities. Each torpedo contained a microcosm of the Prometheus drive. When launched, it would transit through quantum space and materialize inside its target without ever traversing the intervening distance. Admiral Lisa Carter keyed in from Lunar Command. Lunar platforms are online. Gravity wave generators charged to nominal. Stealth fields are stable. The invaders remain blind to our true posture. For half a century, the moon had been hollowed and refitted. Vast chambers carved into basalt to host armaments that bent space-time like malleable clay. Gravity wave rigs could spawn transient event horizons. Quantum projectors could excise matter from continuity. Dimensional breach cannons could open gates into regions where physical law behaved differently. Above, the Zephyrian fleet pressed on with the arrogance of a force certain of victory. Fleet Commander Thakmor watched the pale planet grow on his arrays, entirely unaware he was steering into a snare conceived over 5 decades. In Cheyenne Mountain, General Paul Martinez leaned forward. "Dr. Chen, are cascade parameters finalized?" he asked. Chen ran one last verification. "The equations we are about to trigger surpass anything in recorded xenotheory," he replied. "The quantum resonance cascade will propagate across 11 dimensions at once. It will not merely destroy the targets. It will rewrite their ontological status, convincing the manifold that those vessels never existed. Not shattered, not vaporized. Erased from quantum spacetime without residue. Calculations confirmed. The cascade will eliminate all designated targets simultaneously with 0 survivability and no remnant debris." The Zephyrian fleet settled into its assault formation around Earth's orbit. Thakmor opened every band and issued his ultimatum. "Humans of Earth," he intoned as his image filled every screen, "you have witnessed the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Our fleet has toppled federations and cracked crystalline worlds. Your primitive defenses will not save you. Surrender and your deaths will be swift and merciful. Continue to resist and we will strip the flesh from your bones. We will use your screams to fuel our rites of victory. We will grind your world into ore for our expanding armada." In concealed control rooms across the system, human operators watched their readouts and waited for the single command that would unmake the invaders. The Zephyrians had misread technological progress as linear and predictable. They had never encountered a species that weaponized existence itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in Olympus Command and watched Captain Jake Morrison's face as the revelation settled on him. She had been cleared to disclose the truth. "Jake," she said softly, "the systems we will employ do not destroy matter in any conventional sense. They convince the quantum foam that the target never was. The alien ships will not explode nor leave wreckage. They will simply cease to have been real." Morrison stared, the implication crashing into him. "Elena, what precisely have we made?" he asked. "We have constructed devices that can rewrite the rules binding the cosmos," she answered. "We have learned to nudge the deep structures that hold reality together. While other species escalated size and power, we learned a different craft entirely, one that makes existence itself the instrument of war. They are about to be unmade." The Zephyrian Armada hung around Earth like a black coronet of doom. 350 hulls, over 2 million warriors clustered within, poised to begin the systematic gutting of human civilization. They had no inkling that the species beneath them had evolved along a course the galaxy had never seen. Martinez's voice filled every encrypted channel of the defense net. "All stations, prepare for Omega Protocol activation. On my command, we end this threat permanently." The moment arrived with the hush of something that precedes loss. General Martinez spoke a single syllable into his headset, and with it altered the arc of galactic history. "Execute." Across the system, decades-hidden installations flared to life with power drawn from regimes beyond ordinary space and time. Quantum field generators entombed within the lunar depths pulsed, their energies spilling through 7 dimensions in a single heartbeat. Reality anchors on the great platforms at Lagrange points engaged. Submerged warships launched ordnance that slipped between the lattice of atoms where distance did not apply. Chen watched as instruments that only hours before would have been dismissed as fantasy streamed impossible readings. Quantum cascade initiated. Reality displacement wave propagating at transfinite velocity through targeted dimensional matrices. To every conventional sensor in the Zephyrian fleet, nothing perceptible occurred. Their displays read unremarkable space. No inbound signatures. No incoming fire. Tactical feeds showed normalcy. Fleet Commander Thakmor paced his bridge, preparing the order that would begin orbital bombardment, certain in that instant that human resistance had collapsed. "Weapons officer, prepare the planetary barrage," he ordered. "Target the great population centers. Let them watch their cities burn before we begin the harvest." Khan keyed sequences that would have turned continents to ash. Power coils beneath every Zephyrian hull hummed a note of terrible promise. Then the impossible began to intrude on their certainty. Tactical panels stuttered with readings that contradicted reality. Energy signatures present in instruments yet absent from space. Quantum fluctuations bloomed across the arrays, violating laws their scholars had sworn unbreakable. "Commander, a spatial distortion field," reported one officer, voice tight. "The anomalies are ubiquitous. I cannot isolate a source. Sensors pulsed nonsense. The more they probed, the less the data made sense. Hull cohesion monitors flickered. Particles in the armor behaved as if the rules that bound them had loosened. Subcommander Velas barked for fleet status. Reports came in like a chorus of alarm, every ship registering the same aberrations, molecular bonds jittering, quantum foam around the formation destabilizing. Back at Olympus, Captain Jake Morrison watched the scene unfold with a disbelief that tasted like relief. The dark silhouettes that had filled the sky, massive, implacable, the stuff of species-ending nightmares, began to dissolve as if dawn were washing them away. Hulls turned diaphanous, then translucent. Interiors that had once been solid became ghost rooms, glimpsed through vapor. Weapon mounts faded into wireframe traces of light. Lieutenant Commander Brooks whispered, "My God, look at the signatures." "Sir, they are not exploding. They are being excised. Their quantum profiles are collapsing to zero. From first anomaly to final vanishing, the process took 30 seconds. 350 vessels, each a floating city of steel and fury, went from absolute presence to absolute absence. Over 2 million warriors, their ranks bristling with zeal and arms, were erased as if they had never been mustered. Where the fleet had hung a moment before, space settled back into its ordinary dark, leaving no wreckage, no debris, no cratered testament, only an absence so total it argued that reality itself had been rewritten. 2 million Zephyrian warriors simply ceased to be. The weapons humanity had fashioned did not shred hulls or burn alloy in any familiar way. Instead, they persuaded the cosmos that the Armada had never been assembled at all. Fleet Commander Thackmore felt the oddest sensation of his long career, a slow unmooring from reality. His forearms lightened as if weight had been leached away. Scales on his limbs thinned to a translucent wash. The fierce ember of his eyes guttered like dying suns. The quantum cascade rewrote the rules around him, convincing every atom that it had never agreed to arrange itself into a living thing. Thoughts stuttered and unraveled as neural currents failed to hold their patterns. His final coherent impression was a dawning terror, that they had not been fighting mere primitives. They had encountered a mind that had weaponized the bedrock of existence itself. From her deep control vault beneath the Nevada desert, Dr. Maya Patel confirmed what had seemed impossible. Quantum cascade effect complete. All targeted vessels erased from spacetime. 0 debris detected. 0 electromagnetic signatures. 0 quantum residue within the strike envelope. The silence that followed was absolute and profound. Where moments earlier the greatest armada in recorded galactic history had hung like a blade above Earth's fate, only empty vacuum and scattered starlight remained. The Zephyrian Imperial fleet had not been destroyed in any conventional sense. The laws of physics had been persuaded to forget it ever existed. Colonel Johnson's voice cut through the hush from Pacific Fleet Command. All submarine platforms report successful quantum torpedo deployment. All targets neutralized with 0 collateral impact to orbital infrastructure or civilian populations. Admiral Carter chimed in from Lunar Command. Lunar reality generators returned to standby. Dimensional anchors stable and primed for immediate reactivation should other threats appear. General Martinez slumped back into his chair, feeling, with the weight of it, what humanity had achieved. 30 seconds had sufficed to remove a menace that had subdued 47 star systems, to unmake an empire that had dominated swathes of the galaxy for millennia. More than victory, they had issued a message to the universe. Earth was defended by forces able to alter the foundations of reality. The silence above, where the Zephyrian fleet had hung, struck Captain Jake Morrison more deeply than any combat silence he had known. He stood at Olympus's observation aperture and looked into the same black that had been there before the invasion. No wreckage, no drifting shards, no dying signatures. The night sky had resumed its ordinary face, as if the greatest military concentration in galactic annals had never been mustered. Chen's voice transmitted up from the Nevada facility, carrying the sober cadence of a scientist whose work had remade doctrine. "Quantum cascade sequence complete," he said. "All hostile signatures erased. Space-time settling back to baseline with no anomalous residuals." From the Rockies, General Martinez called for status. "Report in now." Replies cascaded from installations across the globe and outward through the system. Every secret site logged perfect execution. Every quantum array had fired as planned. Every reality generator functioned without fault. The alien menace had been excised so thoroughly, the cosmos itself bore no memory of its presence. Admiral Carter confirmed from Lunar Control. Defense networks easing to normal readiness. Long-range sweeps find no additional hostile vectors within the system or incoming from interstellar lanes. Morrison, still staring at the blank nothing where ships had been, tried to reconcile what he'd witnessed with a lifetime of military thinking. Battles were contests of firepower, logistics, and will. But this had not been a battle in any comprehensible sense. The foe had been erased as cleanly as an error struck from a page. Lieutenant Commander Brooks approached with a tablet that showed nothing but baseline background readings where the Armada had hung. "Sir," he asked quietly, "what happens when the rest of their empire notices their fleet is gone? Will they send probes, dispatch a replacement flotilla?" Morrison opened his mouth to answer, but Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped onto the bridge, tablet in hand, bearing information that would reshape their understanding of interstellar politics. "Actually," she said, "Commander, they will not. We have watched Zephyrian space with our quantum observation lattice for the past hour. Their polity is already unraveling." She threw the main viewer up, star charts blooming across the bridge. Systems once flagged as Zephyrian dominion now flashed with alarms, uprisings, military insurrections, rebel transmissions. It appeared the Empire had held its vassal worlds together by the certainty of its fleet. When that certainty evaporated, when the invaders vanished without distress calls or battle reports, subject populations realized their oppressors were bluffing. The implications rolled through the bridge like a physical wave. By erasing the Imperial Armada so completely, humanity had unwittingly set loose the liberation of 47 star systems. Billions across dozens of worlds were throwing off bondage and seizing the chance to reclaim their futures. Colonel Johnson relayed incoming comms from distant sectors. "General, we are receiving transmission requests from multiple liberated systems. Freed worlds seek assistance establishing defenses. They ask whether we will provide protection against other predators." Martinez considered the irony and scale of what had occurred. Humans had engineered quantum arms for defense. They had not set out to found an empire or to wage liberation wars across the stars. Yet in demonstrating a capacity to remove entire fleets from existence, they had exposed themselves as the region's new paramount power. Dr. Chen's tone, when he spoke, carried the same tremor of possibility that had rippled the command net. "General," he reported, "the cascade methodology can be repurposed for construction as readily as for elimination. We could use this to rebuild shattered worlds, not merely to annihilate threats." The prospect that the mechanism that had unmade the Zephyrian Armada could be inverted to instantiate cities, to restore ravaged biospheres, opened a vista no planner had fully imagined. Humanity could become both shield and architect, not only a martial force, but a remaker of civilizations. Martinez made the choice that would steer humanity's course for generations. "Signal all installations, commence Phase 2 protocols. It appears we have become custodians of far more than our own planet." As reports poured in from newly freed worlds, one truth stood undeniable. The galaxy would never again underrate mankind. The species that had seemed hapless and backward had demonstrated the power to reforge the laws of physics for its ends. Morrison watched the comm panels fill with pleas and petitions from dozens of species, each voice asking the same things: protection from would-be conquerors, help in rebuilding shattered infrastructure, counsel and hardware to deter future threats. The Altarian Federation messaged word of a new provisional government forging liberty. The crystal metropolises of Vex Prime requested aid restoring shattered spires. The militant hives of Kepler asked for guidance in transforming warrior castes into peaceful polities. Dr. Vasquez swept a hollow over the bridge that mapped the political shockwaves. "Jake," she said, In 30 seconds, humanity shifted from an anonymous world hiding in a backwater to the reluctant guardian of almost 50 systems. Human expansion would begin not by conquest but by demonstration, that Earth could protect others from predators. The Zephyrian Empire had been erased, not merely from star charts but from reality's memory itself. In its place began a new chapter of galactic history, authored by a species that had learned to make existence its instrument and who chose, at least for now, to wield that power for protection and restoration. The children of Earth had shown that the most dangerous predator can be the one that appears harmless until the precise moment it decides to act.